We are going to first do our ceremonial oath of office for our newly elected trustees. We are very proud to have our new trustees joining us and very happy that you are all here to join us for this wonderful event. Our first item then is the ceremonial administration of the oath of office to the following individuals elected to the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees in 2018. Ellen Minetto, District B, Andrew Caudill, District C, Jacqueline Calvert, District F. And we'll do these in alphabetical order. So former trustee Veronica Frankel, would you come forward, please, to administer the oath for Jackie Calvert? Yay! Well, she hasn't been, you know.
Come on up.
Yeah, just go out by.
Are you ready?
Please go ahead.
So if you would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jacqueline Calvert,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government of the United States
the Constitution and government of the United States
and the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada.
and the state,
Constitution and government of the
the
state.
Constitution and state of Nevada
Against all enemies,
against all enemies,
whether domestic or foreign,
domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear true faith,
and I will bear true faith,
allegiance, and loyalty
allegiance, and loyalty
to the same.
to the same,
Any ordinance,
and the ordinance,
resolution, or law
resolution, or law
of any state notwithstanding,
of any state notwithstanding,
and that I will well and faithfully perform
and that I will and will faithfully perform
all of the duties
all the duties
of the office of school trustee
of the school trustee
on which I am about to enter.
about on which to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And if you sign here.
Get a shorter name.
Welcome aboard, Trustee Calvert, and thank you, former Trustee Frankel, for joining us to do that.
Thank you.
And now will Pastor Roger, is it Canary?
Yes.
Will administer the oath for both Andrew Caudill and Ellen Minetto.
Well, Andrew, if you'd raise your right hand and put your left hand on while you have the Bible, that'd be fine. Repeat after me. I, Andrew Caudill,
I, Andrew Caudill,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
protect, and defend
protect, and defend
the Constitution and government of the United States
the Constitution and government of the United States
and the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada
and the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
whether domestic or foreign,
whether domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear true faith,
and I will bear true faith,
allegiance, and loyalty to the same,
allegiance, and loyalty to the same,
any ordinance,
any ordinance,
resolution, or law
resolution, or law
of any state notwithstanding,
of any state notwithstanding,
and that I will
that I will
faithfully perform
faithfully perform
all the duties of the office
all the duties of the
of
office
school trustee,
of school trustee,
on which I'm about to enter.
of which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Welcome, Trustee Caudill, and thank you, Pastor Canary.
Thank you.
And now Ms. Minetto.
You raise your right hand, please. Put your left hand on the Bible and repeat after me. I, Ellen Minetto,
I, Ellen Minetto,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
protect, and defend
protect, and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
and the government of the United States
and the government of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
and the government
and the government
of the state of Nevada
of the state of Nevada
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
whether domestic
whether domestic
or foreign,
or foreign,
and that I will bear true faith,
and that I will bear true faith,
allegiance,
allegiance,
and loyalty to the same,
and loyalty to the same,
any ordinance,
any ordinance,
resolution, or law
resolution, or law
of any state notwithstanding,
of any state notwithstanding,
and that I will
and that I will
well and faithfully perform
well and faithfully perform
all the duties
all the duties
of the office of school trustee,
of the office of school trustee,
of which I am
of which I am
about to enter.
about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
I'll sign this. Take this with me.
Yes.
Congratulations and welcome, Trustee Minetto. Thank you, Pastor Canary. Welcome to our new trustees. All right. Woo! All right. Well, having sworn in our new trustees and welcome them, we will begin our meeting. And now we are fully seated as the 2019 Washoe County School District Board of Trustees. I'll call the meeting to order, and Vice President Raymond will do the roll call.
Jacqueline Calvert.
Present.
Andrew Cotto.
Present.
Katie Simon Holland.
Here.
Scott Kelly.
Here.
Ellen Minetto. Here. Melina Raymond, I'm here. Angela Taylor. I'm here. And our student Ananti Ali is not with us today. She may be late.
All right. Thank you, Vice President Raymond. Let's see. Is Pastor Canary still here? No, looks like he's gone. Okay. Deputy Superintendent McNeil, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Ready, begin.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. I do want to let the new trustees as well as members of our audience know that pursuant to Nevada open meeting law, we do not respond to public comments because anything that it might be said in public comment that is not on our agenda has not been noticed to other folks that will be discussed. So we do not respond to public comment. People will make whatever comments they wish, and they have 3 minutes to do so. Do we have public comment, JJ?
You do. Paul White.
Welcome, Mr. White. You have 3 minutes.
I'm Paul White, Reno resident, career public educator, and the director of Stronghold Institute. My remarks are for the entire board, particularly new electees Caudell and Minetto. Congratulations on your election. As a voter, I supported your platforms, most of all your repeated conviction that our school superintendent needs to be replaced. If the 2 board votes from the previous contract renewal meeting are still firm, then the board has enough votes today to replace the superintendent. As someone who spent his career turning around ineffective schools and replacing ineffective leaders, I assure you, everything you do as a board is virtually meaningless until the superintendent is replaced and the minions of administrators who have supported her years of ineffective leadership are reassigned or terminated. As new board members, beware of the 2 words that will be urged upon you by your colleagues, 2 words that absolutely negate any effort at real reform. These 2 words are patience and moderation. With the future of over 60,000 children at stake, you cannot afford to be patient or moderate in your efforts to change this years-long, comprehensive failure that is our Nevada public school system. This is not an overstatement. What would you call a school district who's part of a system that ranks 51st in a nation that itself ranks near the bottom internationally? A school district that's run multi-million-dollar deficits for 11 consecutive years. A school district that sits in the middle of epidemics of drug use and STDs and yet refuses to drug test students or staff and does not even have a current sex education program. Most of all, don't get caught up in the hypnotic psychological phenomenon of groupthink, going along to get along with administration and your colleagues. May the first words out of your mouths at this meeting and every meeting be this question to your fellow board members. How can we be raising our graduation rate each year while the number of graduates who qualify for college-level courses continues to decrease? We have to stop giving out meaningless diplomas, misleading our parents, and setting up our graduates for future failure. May you both make the resolving of these issues a total obsession, and may your commitment awaken your colleagues on this board from a state of defensiveness and denial regarding these issues to a willingness to talk publicly about them and take action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Trina Olson.
Ms. Olson, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. After 22 years of loyal servitude to the district, I was fired by Superintendent Davis in July of 2018. Here's the background. In May of 2017, a teacher on campus reported to me that the dean gave back drugs to a student. The dean then alleged Principal Ford did the same thing. I believed I was a mandated reporter for the safety of that child in our campus. It was my job. When I went to Area Superintendent Roger Gonzalez for guidance, I filed a complaint at his direction. Over the next 10 weeks, I was sidelined with 18 piled-on allegations beginning only days after I reported the incident. During my fight, my lawyer requested discovery documents. The district's HR department wrote, "There is no investigative report." If it sounds like deja vu involving the investigative documents of Jenny Ritchie and Byron Green, I agree. You appealed a court order to release those documents just a few months ago. Paraphrasing you, Madam President, releasing those documents would have a chilling effect on any employee who wants to make a complaint. I again concur. There seems to be a cycle of secrecy instead of accountability in this district. After months of silence from the district, I finally went to arbitration last November, a year and a half later. In the arbitrator's decision, she wrote, "Because of the retaliatory nature of the recommendation for dismissal, the employer's lack of just cause for discharge is arbitrary and capricious." I looked up those words. Abuse of power, failure to exercise honest judgment, bad faith. The district wrote in my reinstatement that they stand by their administrators. It feels like instead of wondering what went wrong with my termination, the district is wondering why I won't go away. Although I'm grateful to have my job back, I didn't win anything I didn't already have, plus $40,000 in legal debt and a damaged career path. Many people tried to dissuade me from speaking today, but if I'm silent now, I've endured it for nothing. If the board doesn't use this case as a precedent for change, the example of my termination will likely perpetuate the behavior of district leadership, promote a culture of fear for employees, and continue to be a tax liability to the community. I'm here today to ask the board for oversight of my still unresolved complaints in the district's possession and in due process revolving my termination. Please do your job.
Thank you, Ms. Olson.
Brett Olson.
Mr. Polson, welcome.
Good afternoon. As you probably guessed, Trina Olson is my wife. Trina has spent over a year and a half fighting for her job, as you just heard. The negotiated agreement process failed. Agreements are only as strong as those who enforce it. Trina contacted Superintendent Davis and was ignored. The negotiated agreement even requires a meeting if requested. This board was also contacted multiple times, and President Simon Holland said that they can't get involved and Trina is to follow the negotiated process. So what is an employee supposed to do when the process fails, the superintendent ignores you and the board won't listen? Some of you board members and district admin are probably tired of the waves my wife has caused and is thinking she just needs to move on because she got her job back. Well, what would you do if you spent 22 years and you were fired after receiving 18 allegations, all within 2 months? Not 1 or 2, but 18 allegations. This is not about misconduct from lower management. Read the arbitrator ruling. This is about 2 area superintendents, yes, area superintendents that continued to attack someone to cover up their own lack of leadership. So what would you do if your retirement after 22 years was threatened? To put this in perspective, the third-party arbitrator found 0 grounds for termination, 0. But yet 2 area superintendents, the director of labor relations, legal counsel, the deputy superintendent, and Superintendent Davis all decided Trina should be fired. If that groupthink doesn't show a fundamental problem with this administration from the top down, I don't know what does. They even appealed Trina's unemployment claim. Not once, but 4 times. She dedicated 22 years of her life to work with these kids, and the district denied her, or tried to deny her, unemployment rights. I'm not asking for a perfect solution, because there is none. I'm asking for progress. This has to change. If you do nothing or take baby steps, you might as well line up more employees, because we're setting a precedence, and this is not an isolated case, as you know. This change must come from the board. As shown in the arbitrator's ruling, the superintendent is either part of the problem or won't hold her people accountable, or even worse, probably both. A message needs to be sent to this district, the superintendent, and this community that people are held accountable in this school district. I've done my part, but I was not elected to represent this community. You signed up for this, so it's time to act. And I'd like to note Superintendent Davis still is not looking up.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson.
Michael Powell.
Welcome, Mr. Powell. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I am a neighbor of Trina Olson, so I've sort of kept up with what's been going on with her her complaints. I don't know the details of the specific complaints, and I'm not here to talk about that those complaints have not been answered yet, although I think they should be. I'm here to talk about 2 things. One, the school district should not be using students as informants against other students without the parents' consent. If there's not a policy prohibiting that, there should be. The other thing is, according to what I've read in press reports and also talking to Ms. Olson, district employees gave drugs back to students. That is wrong. As a parent, that's outrageous. So it seems really obvious to say this, but there needs to be a district policy prohibiting any school employee from giving drugs to a student. It's ridiculous that someone has to say that, but if there's not a policy prohibiting that, there should be. And if there is a policy that already prohibits that and employees violated that policy, those employees should be held accountable. And if district employees knew this happened and covered it up, those employees should be held accountable as well. It would not surprise me at all if giving drugs to a student is a crime. And if that's the case, any employees that did that or covered it up should be held accountable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Powell.
That's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Batchelder. And again, we don't respond to public comment, but thank you for being here. We do appreciate the comments. We do appreciate people taking the time to come down and share their concerns with the board, so thank you. Okay, we will move forward with our meeting, and our first item of business is action to adopt the agenda. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move that the Board of Trustees approves the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Vice President Raymond. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Kelly. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our next item is what we refer to as the annual reorganization of the Board of Trustees. And during this item, we elect new officers for the board. And first off, we will invite our legal counsel, Chris Reich, to give us a discussion and possible action on the process for the nomination and election of trustees as officers of the Board of Trustees. Chris?
Thank you, President. The Board of Trustees generally follows the process for electing its officers to open up the floor of trustees to make a nomination for each office that will follow, president, vice president, and secretary, or clerk, excuse me. And once the nomination is made and seconded, it could be open for any other nominations, which would be seconded. If there is no other second for a second nomination, there can be movement on that first seconded nomination for that office. If there is a second on the second nominated individual, if the first individual does not pass, then there would be a vote on that second individual. If the first individual passes, there's no other action on that office. Is there any questions or clarification needed on that?
Okay, everybody clear on the process? So we just take a nomination, get a second if we have a second, and then any other nominations, and we vote on them in the order that we receive them. And the first one to get a majority is the prevailing person. Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, so do we need to take action to adopt that process? It does say possible action.
Yes, and if, I don't know if who wants to make that motion, if you want me to make it or you want to make it.
Well, you don't make motions.
I know.
Can I have a motion from one of the trustees? Yes. I think Vice President Raymond will accommodate me.
I move that the Board of Trustees approves the process for the nomination and election of officers of the Board of Trustees.
As described by legal counsel.
As described by legal counsel.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Trustee Caudill. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we will now open the nominations for election of President of the Board of Trustees from among the following: Jacqueline Calvert, Andrew Caudill, Katie Simon Holland, Scott Kelly, Ellen Minetto, Melina Raymond, and Angela Taylor. Is there a nomination for the office of President? Yes, Trustee Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to nominate Katie Simon Holland. Did a tremendous job last year, and I think we would benefit from your continued leadership.
Thank you. Trustee Taylor.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Trustee Caudill. Are there other nominations? Okay, we'll close the nominations, and so we will consider that a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Well, thank you. Thank you all, trustees, for this opportunity to serve. We love to serve. Thank you. Okay, next we will vote for nominations and election of Vice President of the Board of Trustees from among Jacqueline Calvert, Andrew Caudill, I will not be in that one, Scott Kelly, Ellen Minetto, Melina Raymond, and Dr. Angela Taylor. Is there a motion for Vice President? Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I nominate Vice President Melina Raymond to serve a second term as Vice President.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Second by Trustee Dr. Taylor. Is there any other nominations? Okay, and that's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any last words, Vice President Raymond?
Thank you.
All right. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Vice President Raymond. All right. And next we will consider election of the clerk of the Board of Trustees from among the following: Jacqueline Calvert, Andrew Caudill, Scott Kelly, Ellen Minetto, and Angela Taylor. Is there a motion? Vice President Raymond.
I'd like to nominate Angela Taylor to serve, Dr. Angela Taylor.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh, okay, thank you, Trustee Caudill. Are there any other nominations for clerk? Okay, hearing none, all the nominations will be closed then. Is there any further discussion? Any last words, Dr. Taylor?
Can I nominate someone?
You missed your chance. I called for it. Yeah, you got to pay attention. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. All right, congratulations to our 2019 officers. And thank you all. We actually, we do need to have a recess still to sign some things, do we, JJ? Okay. Often we will have a recess to move people around, but since the clerk usually sits there and Dr. Taylor's already there and the vice president usually sits there and she's already there, we don't really need to move seats around. So I actually would like to take a recess just to have our photo done, if we could do that. So let's take, it won't be 15 minutes, maybe let's take 10 minutes. And we'll have a recess for 10 minutes, and we'll have our group photo taken. That's all right. And I'll let Sam know we're going to do that. Okay, we will be back in session. And our next item is a closed session of the board pursuant to Nevada Revised Statute NRS 241.0301 and/or NRS 288.2203 and 4, and pursuant to paragraph 12.8.3.7 and 12.8.3.8 of the Washoe Education Association Collective Bargaining Agreement in order to conduct a hearing on Linus Cantor and Daniel Cantor's appeal of non-payment of compensation of additional work reportedly done after the certified contract day of June 12, 2018. So I will consider a motion by a board member to go into closed session pursuant to NRS. When we go into closed session, we will have to clear the chamber. I apologize for that, but we do have to have it closed. So we'll excuse everyone except the Cantors from the gallery, and then when we have listened to the closed session, we will reopen the meeting and take action in an open session. So I will consider a motion from a board member for going into closed session pursuant to NRS.
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Kelly.
Second.
Second by Clerk Dr. Taylor. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll excuse you, and then staff will let you know when we can have you re-enter. Sorry for the inconvenience, folks. Thank you for your patience. I know that any of us would certainly want the full consideration of the board for these matters. So thank you for your consideration of taking the time for us to have that closed session. We are now back in open session, and we are at item 3.02, discussion and possible action pursuant to paragraph 12.8.3.8 of the Washoe Education Association Collective Bargaining Agreement to deny or grant the appeal of Linus Cantor and Daniel Cantor's appeal of non-payment of compensation of additional work reportedly done after the certified contract day of June 12, 2018. The board may either deny or grant the appeal, or pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement, the board does have the option of continuing the item till the next meeting of the board, and so that could be an action that the board takes. The board has not discussed any actions that we would take. We have only discussed the facts and issues in regard to this closed session. Okay, do we have a motion from any of the trustees? Vice President Raymond, did you want to make a motion? Or were you Trustee Kelly who wanted to go first? Okay, Vice President Raymond. Okay, Trustee Kelly, you're up.
I move that the Board of Trustees follow the collective bargaining agreement option of moving this to the next board meeting to give board members more time to review the evidence presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Minetto. Is there other discussion?
I do have a quick discussion. Since Lynn Cantor and Daniel Cantor, since we had a chance to meet them and chat with them, when we have that, if the board votes for it, if we have that follow-on, I think that they should know they have the option of coming in person or perhaps calling in, so because that might reduce any hardship that they have.
Let me ask staff. JJ, is that a possibility to connect someone by phone?
It is, but we would have to check with legal counsel to see if something like that would be allowed, because we don't normally allow people to just call into the public to call into a meeting.
Right. What I would recommend is either we give them the option to attend the actual meeting, and it's also available online for them to hear the decision as well, because I believe the request is just so they can hear the decision, and there are other mechanisms rather than the call-in, because the call-in is generally for witnesses or presenters.
Okay, thank you. Good advice. And just so that everyone understands the nature of the discussion, we did not have background materials prior to the closed session, and they're voluminous, so board members are anxious to review all of those, but will not be asking questions or getting further testimony at a future meeting. So we have a motion and a second. Is there additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, I think we have a lot of people in the room for the consent agenda, so we will go ahead and, if it's okay with board members, we will review the consent agenda, and then we would take a short break for our human needs. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? And I do want to note that there were several questions asked by trustees that we did have answers provided for, and that information does become a part of the official record. Those answers do become part of the official record. First of all, do any trustees want to take any items out of consent?
I do, Madam President. I
Yes.
apologize for not doing this with you on the agenda item, and I'm looking for the number, and now I can't find it. Relating to the dispensers in the
Soap
restroom, soap
dispensers?
dispenser. And the
Okay.
rest, I'd like to move that because I just want to hear.
Okay,
more
I
about-
did respond to that
Mhm.
challenge. Okay,
Mhm.
okay, that one is
There it is, 417.
417. Okay, we will take 417 out of the consent agenda. Is there anything else the trustees want to take out of consent? Okay, hearing none, then I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda items 4.02 through 4.23, is that correct? With the exception of 4.17.
So moved.
Thank you, Vice President.
I'll second.
Second by Trustee Caudill. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's go back then to item 4.17, which is approval of award of hand soap dispensers and hand soap bid 054-05-11-19 to Tahoe Supply Company in the estimated amount of $61,161 for an initial term of 1 year beginning January 16, 2019 and ending January 15, 2020 with 3 optional 1-year renewals for possible action. Welcome, Ms. Sullivan. You have the floor.
Hi, I'm Andrea Sullivan. I'm the Director of Procurement and Contracts for the school district. Happy to answer any questions you have about this.
Just the question. I just wanted you to state on the record, because we were reached out to on the bid that had an option for a $5 payback, for lack of a better rebate, for I don't know the terminology.
I'm choosing to use the word rebate.
Rebate. Let's go with rebate. If you can just share the thoughts on that, and I see your response, Madam President. But for the record.
Sure. So there's a few things. So we issued 2 bids at pretty much the same time. One was for hand soap and dispensers. One was for toilet paper and dispensers. The idea here is we're setting new standards for the district, and we're doing it at a time where we're going to place them in the brand new schools that are opening. So we're starting with the new schools. On the hand soap bid and in the toilet paper bid, this particular bidder put something in his bid document, a piece of paper in, I think he shared it with the board today, that said if he were to be awarded both bids, then he would give us a $5 rebate each time we installed a dispenser in the school district during the first year. And he also says that would maybe save the district up to $10,000 if we were to install all of them in the first year. The problem is these are 2 separate bids, and I can't consider them together. I have to open a sealed bid publicly, and I have to evaluate that bid on its own merits, and likewise with the toilet paper. Also, it came with the caveat that we would enter into a 3-year sublease agreement, which I only have to assume by the definition of a lease that we wouldn't own it at the end of the 3 years. And it's our intent to buy them up front, put them in our schools, and have them there for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, not have to deal with installing and uninstalling them. However, he didn't put any information or terms and conditions about what this sublease would mean. So I had no information even to evaluate the idea of the sublease. Further, on the toilet paper bid, we've determined to cancel, frankly, because the specs weren't clear enough to give everybody enough information, and we want to make sure that that playing field's level. But he was not the low bidder in that, and he wasn't the low bidder by a significant amount. And so there's likely no way that he would win either bid, let alone pull them together, even if I could, which I can't, and award them both to that particular bidder. So in fairness to all bidders, we have a pretty detailed process that we follow in the district, and he offered that. We didn't accept that. We didn't think it was fair, nor do we think his prices were competitive.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan.
Okay, thank you very much. That's
And
it,
just
ma'am.
as an additional point to that, just for everyone's clarification, when someone offers something after the bid specifications have been provided, that specification was not in our bid documents, and therefore any other bidder who might have wanted to offer the same thing hasn't been provided notice. So we can't just add on some favor that somebody wants to do. And also, the appeal was not timely. So
That's right. They all have a way. There is a remedy any time that a bid is issued and recommended for award where a bidder can appeal, and it is in statute, in fact, that they have to follow this appeal process, and we detail in our bid document, and it's also in statute for them to follow. So if the bidder had an issue, the proper channels would have been to file an appeal with my office to start the process. That requires, if I receive an appeal, I can't bring it to the board for award until it's been resolved. So that would have been the process for him to follow. All bidders were directly emailed the bid results and the recommendation of award. We're only required to post it, but we take an extra step just in fairness so that they know when we posted it and when the appeal window opens, and we emailed it directly to all bidders. And on the recommendation of award document, it actually says when the appeal window will close, so they were well aware of when the appeal window would close. And we didn't hear anything from that bidder until this morning when they emailed the trustees.
Okay, thank you, Andrea.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're very welcome.
Do we have a motion regarding 4.17?
Madam President, I move that the board accept agenda item 4.17 and approve the award of hand soap dispensers and hand soap bid 054-05-11-19 to Tahoe Supply Company in the estimated amount of $61,160 for an initial term of 1 year, beginning January 16th, 2019, and ending January 15th, 2020, with 3 optional 1-year renewals.
Just one quick correction. I think you said $61,160, and it's $61,161.
Okay, I'll give you $1.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to be clear.
As corrected.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Great, thank you, Trustee Caudill. Motion by Dr. Taylor, second by Trustee Caudill. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, I hate to do this to all of you who've been waiting, but we need to take a quick break, and let's be back here at 20 minutes to 5. Okay? All right, we'll be in recess until 4:40. Okay, we will call back to order this meeting of the Board of Trustees, and we are now at items under number 5, presentation and update on the status of guest teacher substitute recruiting and staffing. Emily Ellison, our Chief Human Resources Officer, is here, and this was a board request. We know that the shortage of substitute teachers is a huge problem in the district. It not only creates problems for children in the classroom, but it also means that we have less flexibility for teachers to attend professional development and all the other things that are important to us. So, Ms. Ellison, welcome and thank you.
Thank you for having me. President Simon Holland, Superintendent Davis, members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Again, my name is Emily Ellison. I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer for the district. And as Katie mentioned, this presentation is the result of a board request. And we have some interesting data to share today related to our guest teacher workforce. You'll probably first notice the change in language for the segment of our workforce that we traditionally have referred to as substitute teachers. But we also know that how we talk about something matters, and we want to move to the guest teacher title to more accurately reflect the role and importance of this segment of our workforce in our schools and classrooms. So I'll share with you kind of the agenda of what we'll talk about today. But really the key takeaways that I think you'll see in the themes throughout are, first, that there is a guest teacher shortage that's impacting our educators in our classrooms. Second, that there's a lot of work that's being done to address that shortage, but there are a lot of factors that are influencing our ability to have enough guest teachers to meet the needs of our employees. And then finally, we will be back at a future date, probably in the next couple of meetings, to talk about kind of next steps in terms of compensation or financial incentives that are aimed at addressing the issue. That said, we're going to talk a little bit today about guest teacher workforce data, highlights from our recruiting efforts, and then I'll share with you a little bit of data around compensation and what the competitive landscape looks like for this employee group. So let's look at some of the data. In total, we have 1,660 active guest teachers as of December. And from an industry perspective, best practice is to have one guest teacher for every 3 certified staff. And so we actually are a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of we have one guest teacher for every 2.5. So the information on the right-hand part of the slide indicates a big part of where our challenge exists, and that is that 42% of our active guest teachers work less than 20 days in a year. And so aside from continuing to maintain a strong recruiting pipeline, we're trying to think about ways that we can get these employees to work more often so that we can cover more absences and needs within our schools. Based on the need right now, there's an opportunity to work 185 days a year for most employees. And we do have a percentage of our employees, the 60 to 120 plus days, that work pretty consistently. And our process for identifying long-term subs is that when an employee goes through the orientation process, they can indicate an interest, or throughout the year, they can indicate an interest with our sub office. And then as schools have a need for what we define as long-term positions, more than 20 days, then we make that list available. And then schools really screen for the best fit for those positions. So there are a lot of factors, I think, that influence these numbers, and the amount of time that, the amount of days that an employee works. Some are within our control and some are not. When we look at who our guest teachers are, we do have a very strong relationship with our colleges and universities, particularly the University of Nevada. They have recently moved to a model where as soon as teacher prep candidates are entering the College of Education, they're having them get their sub-license. We are looking and working with the business office to try and identify some incentives for those folks to help maybe offset some of the cost of their paid internship or their unpaid internship at the end of their teacher prep program. So those are all really great partnerships, but also by nature of being a college student, they may not be able to work as much as someone who does this, for their occupation. We also know that we have a large contingent of our workforce that are connected to particular school communities. So, for example, retirees in the Incline Village community who are simply interested in working at Incline Village schools, or stay-at-home parents who are connected to a particular school community, and the extent of their interest in filling these absences is really tied to that particular school community. So they're very much a casual workforce. So the question really becomes, how do we continue to have those pipelines of employees and also attract a more regular, if you will, workforce to fill our sub-assignments. Aside from a recruiting perspective, we know that the experience that an employee has in their first few assignments will impact their interest in continuing to work in these positions. And so we're working really closely with our schools to share best practices around creating welcoming climate. How do we help prepare our guest teachers to be successful in the classroom in their first few assignments so that they want to continue filling assignments? And I think one of the things that is really affecting our ability to attract and retain guest teachers is our economic climate. It's no surprise to anyone that it's a very competitive labor market right now. And I think this slide really depicts nicely the relationship between unemployment and our unfilled request rate. So the blue line is the unemployment rate on an annual basis since 2013. And the yellow line is the unfilled sub rate. And so as you can see, as unemployment decreases, the unfilled sub rate increases, which makes it challenging to fill our assignments. When we look at the competition that we have, not only are we competing with other districts potentially for this workforce, but we're competing with industry as well. And then I think you have to take into consideration, maybe a lot of people don't know this, it's not just all people who are eligible to work who can be considered for a substitute teaching license through the Department of Education. You have to have either an associate's degree or 60 college credits. And so if you take the whole labor market and all the competition that exists just in general, now you take that pool and make it that much smaller because not everyone meets those requirements. So that's another hurdle, of course, that we face in trying to close the gap between those two lines. There really isn't just one solution, but we do believe that it's a combination of things, and we'll talk about compensation in a minute. But recruiting is another important element. And so this just gives you a little snapshot of some of the things that we're doing to focus on guest teacher recruiting. We did an HR restructure in July and dedicated some additional resources solely focused on guest teacher recruiting, and we've revamped some of our processes in terms of how we screen and put those folks through orientation. We also are assembling a district-wide task force to focus on recruiting and really how we get to candidates in general, because many of you have heard me say before, recruiting is a team sport. And so I think when we get people together and talk about, how do we connect to candidates that may not know about the opportunities that we have in the district, we're always open to ideas about how we can add to this list. We have a relatively small recruiting budget, but we have invested a lot of that money into advertising in different channels like billboard, radio, theater. Hopefully some of you have seen our billboards, for example, around town. But we do have limited resources, and those, of course, are expensive channels to utilize in order to get the word out. But we try to be creative as well, and we do a lot of direct outreach. I call them call-a-thons, where we take whatever data we can get our hands on and outreach to see if people are interested or know someone who might be interested. We've looked at DMV advertising. We've even gone so far as to try and figure out how we can get advertising on those placards that are in the grocery carts at grocery stores. So if you ever think of a channel that we can explore, we're happy to figure out whether or not that's a possibility, or if there's ever a group that you can get us in front of to talk about the opportunities, we're happy to come and tell our story and talk about why you want to work for the district and the different opportunities that we have available. So,
Emily, do we use buses? Do we use bus advertising?
It's very, very expensive. We've explored putting signage on our own vehicles, and there are some now hiring stickers on our buses. And we've talked a little bit about putting the magnets on the side of district cars. I'm a little bit afraid that it gives someone a number to call for driving things, but no, I'm just kidding.
No, I know wherever you speak when I was campaigning and had it on the side of my car. So
Right?
No, but we're all driving appropriately, I know.
Yes. The biggest thing is just trying to look at all those options and figure out where we think we'll get the most bang for our buck, because again, we have very limited resources, and we're trying to reach the broadest audience possible. So, but we're always open.
Does Join still have that They have a retired executives score, I think it's called. That doesn't exist anymore.
Well, I was familiar with the ProNet group. And
or ProNet, yeah. ProNet
yeah,
is
and
the
they're
one.
not in
They're
existence
not, okay.
anymore. But I mean, those types of resources, Join, Job Connect, we've worked with them to have on-site hiring events, to put postings on bulletin boards. I mean, that's some of the very grassroots stuff that we're doing, right? Like flyers, and we divide up sections of town and say, go drive around and put flyers wherever you can find a bulletin board to put them. So,
well, thank you for the great effort, and I know that the team is really working hard on it. I'm just thinking there may be groups of retired people who would be particularly capable.
Yeah.
College educated, for example. Trustee Kelly?
Yeah, and I wanted to piggyback on that. I mean, these are types of recruiting efforts, but I'm kind of curious, what kind of target audiences are you going after? I mean, I would think, for instance, senior citizens are a great audience to go after, but senior citizens wouldn't be reachable through some of these, so I'm just kind of curious, how do you reach out to audiences, what types of audiences?
Yeah, so great question. I'm sorry if I repeat myself when we talk about bus drivers, but I was going to talk a little bit then about how we really have kind of two sets of recruiting plans, right? One is a broad-based outreach plan that has a lot of these kind of big bucket, how do we have a very broad message type sources, and then there are absolutely focused sources. So if we identify, for example, retirees as a potential audience, which they would be a target audience for guest teacher recruiting, we've talked about things like reaching out to PERS, right? And can we get something, is there a newsletter that we can get something put into, or is there a way to connect to retirees in that sense? There's some, like the retired, I can't think of the acronym, but in a few of the Northern California communities where they have retired teachers associations, we've worked with them to see if we could sponsor a luncheon or put something in their newsletter, right? So yes, we absolutely do those sort of focused outreach, thinking about who the best fit would be for a particular position, who our target audience is, and then customizing a recruiting plan to that group. So, but again, if you have ideas about how we reach people, right? What circles do they run in, and how can we connect to them? We're always open to that. So,
Trustee Caudill?
Does the district currently allow student teachers to cover classes? Let's say you have a fifth grade class with a student teacher and another fifth grade class of teachers out that day. Do you have the student teacher then cover that class for the day for experience, and it helps with the shortage?
So we did move to a model about, I want to say 3 years ago, where all student teachers have their sublicense, so they can do that. We have to be really cautious in the amount of time that they get pulled to do substitute teaching, because the requirement from the universities in terms of internship experience is time with a lead teacher. And so if they're not getting that really valuable mentor teaching modeling experience, then it degrades the quality of their internship. So when we have a consistent position that we need to utilize an intern in, we call that a paid internship. It's subbing in a vacant classroom usually, or maybe to cover a leave or something like that. We have to get the university's approval, and we go through a pretty extensive vetting process to make sure that even though they're not going to be in a traditional internship, that they're still going to get the mentoring and modeling and guidance that they would if they were in a traditional internship. So we want to make sure that they're well prepared at the end of that experience.
Trustee Dr. Taylor?
Thank you. Just keep adding stuff. Huh?
That's right.
Thank you, Madam President. Emily, how about students? Not students who are going into teaching per se, but students, whether they're TMCC students or university students, if they have over more than the 60 hours. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of them only have classes 2 or 3 days a week. They make their schedules that way. That may be a market.
Absolutely.
To get to. I don't know if we've had an opportunity to kind of try to connect up there, but
yep. So
not a bad gig.
We go to their job fairs. We post on their job boards. We post on their bulletin boards, and then also the university has a really robust career center, and we've had information information sessions on how to become a substitute teacher and what the opportunities are and what other kinds of positions we have available. They're really gracious about letting us, as much as possible, have some kind of dedicated time where people can come learn about our opportunities.
Okay, good. All right. Please
Okay.
continue.
Excellent. So, we're going to continue working really hard at recruiting and retention and all of the other things that go into making sure that we have enough guest teachers to fill the need. But there is a relationship between unemployment and fill rates, right? That other slide tells an important story, and compensation is a component of that. And what you see on this slide is a compensation history, and it shows that in nearly 20 years, guest teacher pay has increased from $75 to $90 per day, so about $15 in 20 years. The last pay increase occurred in 2015 when we went from $82 to $90 a day. And the next slide gives you some perspective of how we compare to other districts. So we include Clark because they're the other large district in Nevada. Of course, we're probably not competing for guest teachers with Clark, but I think it's a good benchmark being a large district. But then for the surrounding districts, and while they are the rurals and people wonder if they'll commute, I do believe there is a segment of the workforce that we compete with, particularly, if you live on any of the outskirt communities, it probably makes sense if you live in Northwest Reno to drive to Truckee if there's an opportunity. If you live in South Reno, it probably makes sense to drive to Carson City. And as you can see from the data here, the districts that we compete with for substitute teachers or guest teachers are paying between $7 and $30 more per day in base pay. All but one of those districts has given an increase since we last did in 2015, and those increases have ranged from $5 to $20 per day. And some of the districts have gotten really creative in compensation, providing additional incentives for employees who complete specific certification programs or who work in specific types of assignments at specific schools. So as I mentioned before, I'm working closely with the business office to evaluate what's possible, knowing that we have budgetary constraints, but we've also, reached a critical time in terms of being able to meet the need. And so we'll be coming back in a future meeting to talk about what that might look like for this year and then for years moving forward.
Emily, two questions. One, have we done any kind of surveying with substitute teachers to find out what would make them more willing to spend time with us? And then second question, if you know, what is the amount we spend annually on substitute teachers out of the budget?
I do not know the annual amount, but I can get that. Okay. And we have done some exit surveys, if you will, or, hey, we see you haven't worked for us in a while. Can we get some feedback, or can we understand what's happened there? Because it is sort of a casual labor workforce, we don't really get an indication that they're not working anymore until a period of time elapses where they haven't worked. And we get a pretty low response rate, right? But of the feedback that we have gotten, there's really kind of two themes that jump out, and that would be obviously competition in the labor market, and not just competition with other districts, but just in general, there's a lot of competition for our workforce. And then particularly the people who work like 1 or 2 days, they either didn't feel it was a fit for them, right? It wasn't what they expected, or they didn't feel like they were able to be successful in that role for whatever reason. So that goes back to a little bit of what I talked about in terms of working with schools to help make sure that we're creating a really welcoming, supportive climate. And then also from a central office perspective, what can we do to help provide training on the front end so that they know what to expect and they know how to be successful when they get into the classroom, because every classroom is going to look so different. So, Trustee Caudill.
My mother is a retired teacher, and she spends 3 to 5 days a week now subbing. Yeah. Do we have, well, not here.
Oh,
but
can she sub here?
Well, she's in Wisconsin, so it's a long commute. But do we have retired teachers that are subbing, and do we think there's a market there to bring back more? I don't know if they would want to, if there's any incentives there. Is that an opportunity?
So we do have a lot of retirees that sub. I would say they fall into kind of two buckets. One being that they have a specific school community that they are comfortable with and that they're willing to work for, right? And so they are that kind of casual labor force that we talked about at the beginning. But then there are some who do work regularly. And then we also have in our district what's called a critical needs designation. So for retirees in particularly hard to fill areas, for example, special education, math, science, early childhood, in those classrooms, they have the opportunity, if they want to work regularly, to be hired on contract for a one-year only contract and continue to draw their PERS. So I think of the folks who are interested in working pretty consistently, if there's an opportunity for them to do that, that's certainly more lucrative. But again, some of the options that we are exploring with the business office is when we look at total compensation or what our structure looks like, should there be a differentiation, if you will, for either a teacher or a retiree who holds a full certification, right? That's one of the scenarios that we're playing around with right now, and then trying to drill down into our workforce to understand what each of those scenarios would look like and what the total cost would be, so that when we come back with options, you guys have a good perspective of what that would look like.
I love the idea of introducing people to what they can expect being a substitute, because I know, I'm a person with a college degree, and it would terrify me to walk into a classroom and be responsible. And I'm thinking about, are there ways that we could do some sort of an introductory fair, an open house kind of thing. I mean, I'm thinking back to the wonderfully successful open house fair we did at Meadowood Mall the day, Saturday before school started. Mm-hmm. If there was a way to, advertise well and do something at the mall or someplace where people already are, just so that they could be introduced and just get a little more comfort level with it. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great idea. I think if we can, the more people we can get in front of, the better, right? That the Back to School Expo was probably one of our best recruiting events. We go to a lot of job fairs and stand there and beg people to come to work, and that one was a great one, right? Yeah. But we've also talked about having specific events at specific school sites, mm-hmm. right? So people might want to just kind of sub in their local geography, and if they could come in, get a feel for the school, meet the administrator, mm-hmm. Just maybe even feel comfortable, like, where do I park and where do I go when I get there, type thing, that might help. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we've talked about trying as well.
And then do you do anything with faith-based community?
We do
church organizations.
Yeah, we do have a list, I would say, of probably about maybe 18 or so that have pretty extensive congregations or communities that are either willing to push out information in electronic communication or will allow us to send postings and that sort of thing.
Great.
So,
okay,
yeah,
good. Yes, Vice President Freeman.
The kind of other professionals in our schools, the librarians and the cafeteria staff and the school psychologists and counselors, do they pull from the same pool, or how are we filling those positions when they're sick or going to trainings?
So it looks a little bit different for many of the groups, right? So there are some sub-counselors, for example, and that's just their own pool because it requires a special certification. When it comes to, for example, our paraprofessional staff, so aides and assistants, we are also working to build another pool of subs to cover for those positions as kind of on an as needed basis. So it really depends on the group. This information is largely for just teachers, traditional classroom staff.
Are the other areas experiencing the same shortages and substitutes?
Yes.
And so, like a speech pathologist or, someone in that line, would their compensation be the same as what we're seeing here, or is that another area where we, in comparison to outlying communities, are lower?
in terms of the rates that we pay for those positions.
Substitutes, do they just pull from, like a speech pathologist would probably be like a
I think they pull from each other to cover versus having a dedicated pool. And like the counselors, like I mentioned, they typically would pull a sub-counselor in if it was going to be a longer-term situation where like leave coverage was needed versus the kind of day-to-day filling.
Okay. I'm just wondering if we're going to be considering these wage increases for our guest teachers, should we at the same time look at some of those other pools and see where we compare, and maybe especially as we're looking at budgeting for next year, it might be helpful to see if there are those kind of crisis levels of sort of help to support the positions. And I know just from my own experience that like the school librarian never wants to take a sick day because she doesn't feel like there's anyone that could be there, and she doesn't want the kids to miss library. So.
Right. The other thing to consider is that our guest teachers are a group that are not, their compensation is not negotiated. And so anything related to supporting our other employee groups is covered by the collective bargaining agreements and would need to be negotiated. So this is sort of the standalone group.
Trustee Cotto?
Do we currently offer incentives to guest teachers to go out to outlying areas such as Cold Springs or those kind of communities?
We do not currently. We did at one time, and we discontinued that practice because we couldn't find a relationship between offering those incentives and increased fill rates. But it's something that we're also looking at again in the possible options.
Great. Okay. Go ahead. I think you have one more slide.
Oh, okay. All right. So what's next? As I mentioned, we're working closely with the business office to explore compensation options. We're also working with the Department of Professional Learning to explore alternatives to how we access professional learning so that we can try and minimize the number of days that teachers are away. Because we also know that even if we get the requests covered, having your normal classroom teacher in the classroom is really important to student learning. We're talking about exploring incentive options for this year because it is also very difficult to change a pay structure mid-year, and so that'll be some things for you to consider. We talked a little bit about guest teacher supports, right? So how do we prepare them on the front end to be successful, and then is there an opportunity to provide some ongoing training as well for those that do decide that they want to do this work more regularly. And then we've begun to really dig into specific school data to understand how guest teachers are requested and how they're utilized so that we can work with schools to have school-specific solutions. For example, we had one administrator approach us to say, hey, I've got a lot of unfilled absences. Tell me what you're seeing. And as we dug a little bit deeper into the data, we found that the requests were being entered in very close proximity to the start time of the request, right? And so there seems to be about a 2.5 hour sweet spot where if you enter it 2 hours before the start time, the likelihood of it being picked up is very slim. And so that's an easy conversation to have with staff. Hey, we know last minute emergencies happen, and there are going to be times that you might need to enter something an hour before the start time. But whenever possible, if you can enter it 3 hours or more, it greatly increases the likelihood that it will get picked up. Those are easy conversations to have that are school community specific and can hopefully help to increase the outcomes as well. So we're trying to dig into that data for, for schools that are interested in exploring that information and come up with some school-specific solutions. So, any other questions?
Well, Emily, wonderfully well thought out strategies. My hat's off to you and the whole team.
Thank you.
It's very comprehensive, and you're facing some really challenging circumstances. So very, very well done, and really appreciate your leadership to help bring this forward.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, well, we'll look forward to hearing more. I know we're limited by resources, but we want to give you and your team all the support we can to help address this. So thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Martin, Presentation and discussion on the Transportation Department bus driver shortage plan. Potential service level reductions and possible ways to address shortages. And I'm so pleased that you all are here, and I know how challenging this must be for you. I know you guys are out there driving buses part of the time just to get the job done. So thank you for the hard work on this.
Thank you. Superintendent Davis, President Holland, distinguished members of the board, and welcome new members of the board. I'm looking forward to working with you in the future. The reason we came to meet with you today was just to give you information on where we're at from this transportation standpoint in dealing with driver shortages that we're coming up against. As Emily stated, that they're having those similar shortages with their substitute or guest, guest teachers. We have the same situation coming into play with us with our current drivers. From the standpoint of just, it's not a situation of people coming to us and staying with us, but it's a situation where we're just not getting a lot of applicants for the job as a whole due to the current economic market, the 3.2% unemployment. It's just, there's just a lot of people going for the same candidates, and so it's difficult to get a lot of people in that. And obviously from our standpoint, it's a little bit different in the type of job we do. You have to understand that you're going to have a split shift, so you're going to start anywhere from 5 to 6 in the morning, drive 3 hours or so, and then have half your day off, and then you'll come back in the afternoon at 1 or 2 in the afternoon and begin and finish anywhere from 5 to 6 in the evening. So you're doing a 12-hour day, and in most cases getting 6 hours to 6.5 hours of pay for that type of situation for that job. So in addition to that, it's also only a 180-day-a-year job. So it's not, so when we're off on breaks, you're not scheduled to work, you don't get paid. You're off during the summer, you're finding other opportunities. In this competitive job market, it's difficult because people are looking for 40-hour jobs annually. And it's not a job that we can offer that. From that standpoint. So those are some of the challenges that we're up against with just how the job is situated from that standpoint. So currently we've implemented a number of items as indicated on Tier 1 here with our buses. We've been working to dissolve runs, and by a run what we mean is a school transportation piece for, so say from one school to and from. A route can be 2 schools attached. So I'll use an example. Say we start in the morning with O'Brien Middle School. That's our first run for a school. And then they will come back and they may pick up Alice Smith for their next run afterwards. So that's a route. So it's combined 2 runs. And in some cases we have schools that, or buses that service 3 different schools, depending on the timing and how that works. So they'll have on any given day at least 4 schools that they're servicing, and as often as 6. And then if they're doing some little items, picking up special program students or whatever, they may have as many as 7. So, so that's a route, is a combination of all of that. So when we're talking about dissolving runs, we're not necessarily dissolving a whole route. We may be dissolving just one opportunity for a school. So we've been working on those aspects and working through those areas now and using our staff to drive and on a very regular basis. And as it's indicated in the plan, on average it's about 18 staff a day driving. That's support staff, that's our dispatchers, that's our training staff, that's our field safety supervisors, that's our administrators. They're in a bus, they're driving. And some of them have actually said, I want my own route. So, they've picked it. So, so from that standpoint, there's a breaking point for us in that area too, because we're losing services on that end. We have fewer dispatches in the office for emergencies. We have fewer trainers available. If we have an accident out on the road, we have fewer field safety supervisors or no field safety supervisors available out there. So Mr. Lee has graciously taken that on many times to answer that call. So from that standpoint, those are the areas where we're getting to a point where we know that we may have to implement some other avenues of support, and some of that may pertain to less service options, or at least insufficient service options for our students and our parents and the like. Our breaking point isn't there yet with the 18 staff, but we start looking at 25 to 26 staff driving consistently every day. That's basically my entire support staff out. That means I'm, in a bus too, or working through that. So from that standpoint, we're not there. We're not at that critical needs mass, so to speak, but we're getting close. And so we just wanted to bring that to your attention so that you know that we may have to work into some different options as we go forward to provide service to our students to get them to and from school. So those secondary tiers, as we go through them, most of them are basically built on increasing ride times and occupancies on buses. So one of the things we have is our programs, and I'll use our SWAS program as an example.
Which is
we have
schools
four,
within a school.
School within a school, thank you. Yeah, for the acronym there. So our school within a school program, we transport elementary students. There's 4 schools that have that are designated school within a school program. So that's Collin Ranch, Hunsberger, Whitehead, and GOM. And we transport students from all outlying areas to those 4 regional schools. So we may be moving students from the North Valleys to Collin Ranch, and there's a number of them. And right now we support that with about 3 or 4 buses in those transporting those students. And they're on the bus for anywhere from, we have a couple that, because they're more urban and close, maybe 15 minutes, but we have some that are on the bus already for an hour and 17 minutes. So it's a long time. Or is it? Yeah, for that standpoint. If we end up having to combine some of those buses to help with that service aspect, those students might be on the bus anywhere more than have an increase of anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes on top of that. So if you're on an hour and 17 minutes on a bus, now you're potentially on a bus for 2 hours, both ways, morning and afternoon, to get there from that service standpoint. It would increase occupancies in that standpoint too as well. In those cases, they're smaller loads on the buses, so it wouldn't be that much of an issue. But if you start dealing with AACT, the Academy of Arts and Technical Careers, and then the International Baccalaureate at Worcester, now you're talking buses there that are much more full in their occupancy. So they could be anywhere from 65% to 70% occupancy right now. When you're talking high school students, that's pretty packed. Yeah. From that standpoint. I mean, you put 80% of high school students in this room right now, that would be pretty packed. Mm-hmm. So from that standpoint, we would end up still being within industry standards, but we may have to increase those occupancies closer to 90, which is uncomfortable. And again, running into those same situations of combining buses and then increasing ride times. So that's where that is. And some of those schools come in from Cold Springs to the North Valleys. We pick up at DeMonte Branch and Pleasant Valley to bring those students into AACT and into Worcester for the International Baccalaureate. So those are things that we have to look at as a serious option. And it's a service issue. We will still be able to get the students to and from school, but it won't be in quite the timely manner or as comfortably as we would like to have them serviced from that standpoint. From our standpoint, we're looking at moving potentially if we have to move into these, moving our CDL testing, which is our training division, having them test our drivers on Saturdays, which is an increase in time, but then we have our training staff available to drive from that standpoint. But we also then roll into situations with our training staff where now they're working pretty consistently 6 days a week, or does that become a breaking point for them from a service standpoint? Increased in lieu of payment opportunities. From that standpoint, what that was talking about is primarily we have by law in the state, we can offer in lieu of payment if we can't produce transportation for certain students, program students, special needs, those types of situations. The NRS indicates that we can only pay up to $10 a day on that. That's,
wow.
Yeah, that's all. So Trustee Caudill had asked, would that be a hardship on a parent? And it would be from that standpoint. And we can supplement that income a little bit. But if you're, again, bringing your student in North Valleys and say you're going to Wooster or the Career Academy, it's a bit of a drive. And there's some costs there to them. And even though it's supplemental, it's still not going to be advantageous for the parent or the student, and he had asked if there would be some loss. And potentially there could be some loss from the program in those types of situations, and we want to try to avoid that as much as we can. We don't want that. We want to be able to get those students to those programs that they desire to be in and that they're qualified to be in as often as we possibly can.
And that's the only circumstance under which we can pay parents to drive kids to school is when it's a special program where we can't be. Yeah, we can't
support it. Yeah, we can't support general ed zone schools. These are all cross-zone transportation.
We do get asked often, well, can't we provide taxi vouchers or bus vouchers, et cetera, but state law prohibits us from doing that except in those special circumstances.
Right, correct. In those cross-zone transportations that we can't provide those circumstances. And then there might be some opportunity with the bus passes, as President Holland indicated. And that would be the first initial step that we would start with. And then the other steps, I'm not going to go through each one of them individually for time's sake, but in a nutshell, what those areas would become more of a shuttle situation. So by that, what I'm indicating is that, again, I'll use O'Brien as an example. So we have 2 buses picking up 2 congruent neighborhoods right now for timing and all of that. If we have to diminish those service levels, it means we are now going to take 1 bus and service those 2 neighborhoods. But in order to do that, we don't have the occupancy availability in that bus to take all those students at one time. So we're going to have to start one group earlier, bring them to school earlier, and then shuttle back and get the other one. And then it would be the same thing in the afternoon. From that standpoint. So those are potential opportunities. No, I won't say opportunities, but those are potential situations that we may confront here in the future. I'm not anticipating that in the near future. I think that we definitely can make it to spring break, at least, I'm hoping, without having to even look at Tier 2. But we're just, wanting to be on the ready and letting you know that these options might be there and that we need to be on the ready for that from the standpoint. And, the issue of just trying to get employees in the door is just, they're just not applying. November, we had 2 applicants. That was it for a driver position.
And what's our total complement of bus driver employees?
The total complement is 297 if we actually had a full complement, but and we have about 270 bus runs, but we're currently, we're definitely short 24 open allocations right now, and then we also have a few people out on LOAs and CDS claims, so that adds to that. So,
Mr. Martin, would changes in the bell schedule alleviate any of this? I know that David Lasik is shooting me daggers right now.
I have to go handle snow. So.
But
I think I'd rather do that.
We have to look at everything. We have to consider.
Oh no, I understand, and we have gone through those exercises in the past, and obviously, as I indicated earlier, we do stack our buses, so we're doing the school with 2 and some even 3. If we were to look at a bell schedule to do that, we could potentially gain. I think we looked at these numbers a while back before, so I'm going off the top of my head, but it was I think we could gain another 30 or so opportunities there. But the situation with that is obviously it's a long drawn out process.
Right.
We have to bring that before the public. We have to have a number of public forums. There's a number of situations involving businesses, parents,
after school
jobs, after school athletics.
We need to have the conversation, from time to time.
Yeah, I'm more than willing to have that conversation as long as it's state. No. from that standpoint. No, I mean,
and
obviously.
stick ice picks in your eyeballs.
Yeah, I
too.
know, yeah. I think David's doing that for me.
Yeah.
So, but from that standpoint, yes, it is a conversation that needs to be held, and it is a conversation that needs to be looked at from the standpoint of can that better equate to.
We're desperate at
Right,
this point.
right, and there's another with that type of change. Obviously, there's some other opportunities there that can help. So from that standpoint, yes, it's could be on the table for discussion. It's not going to fix the problem this year, but.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Do you have more you wanted to add, or?
No, that
time
was
to go to
kind of in a
questions?
nutshell.
Any questions? This is one where I don't know what more you can be doing than what you're doing. I'm so grateful, and I appreciated the thought that went into your anticipation of what plans might be needed. So thank you to you and your team for that really thoughtful plan that you've provided. No questions? Yes, Dr. Taylor.
I do, Madam President, especially since Emily's still here. How do we compare, how do we compete from a pay standpoint? Do we have any information on that at all for bus drivers, since we just talked about that for guest teachers? How's that looking?
RTC is a little bit less, but some of the newer ones are a little higher.
Right. So when we look at like RTC, right, comparable bus service, they are a little bit less than we are, but the schedule is not like Rick talked about, where it's a split shift. We kind of joked about maybe going and recruiting in the middle of the night, though, because that's probably a whole different experience driving a bus in the middle of the night, right? But they still are. They still are a target market for us, and we look to how we can connect with those folks. And then when you look at just drivers in general or CDL holders, typically truck drivers make more than we offer. But there's still a segment of those folks that we look to connect with. So if you're an over-the-road driver and you've been doing that a long time and you want to get off the road, right, this might be a good opportunity. And we also looked to the positions, could we potentially split them apart and have people who are interested in just maybe one portion of that. So I thought of UPS drivers or UPS workers, for example, right? They work a very early morning shift at UPS and perhaps would be interested in another couple of hours of work in the afternoon driving a bus. So there are still segments that we can reach, but I would say by and large we're a little bit below market when it comes to drivers or CDL holders in general.
How do we compare to Uber and Lyft?
Oh, it's funny that you should say that, because we were just talking about how we could connect to Uber. I was going to ask for a budget to go take a lot of Ubers, hand out a lot of cards, right? If you have cards, hand them out when you're taking Uber, because we thought the same thing, like they could drive and then drive Uber in the middle of the day. It's really difficult to get any data on what Uber compensation looks like because it's so variable. I mean, there's some Uber drivers who are very, very happy with their situation, and others who are rather disenchanted with what the compensation structure looks like. So,
yeah.
And then I think Rick made a really great point too, right? When I was just trying to think of who are people that drive, driving passengers is a whole nother experience, right?
Yeah.
And so, being responsible for a busload of kids is definitely not something that appeals to everyone. So,
Yep. I told you I tried to talk my husband into it, but he wasn't going to have any of it. I did.
When can he interview?
I joked with leadership team that everyone either had to get a sub license or a CDL.
That's
so
right.
Pick your license.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Any other questions? Ooh. Uh-oh. Did you hear that? Vice President Raymond
I did.
had a CDL.
We have your phone number.
Yeah, they know how to find you. And certainly anyone out there who is listening to this, we welcome folks to inquire and follow up on jobs that are really important to our community. So thank you all for the presentation and the great thought on this. And please thank our bus drivers.
I will do.
Trustee Taylor and I were out there with the superintendent first day of school at 5:30 in the morning, and boy, what a dedicated group of people. And in the winter, with having to put chains on those buses and And the kids aren't happy about being out there in the dark waiting
No.
for the bus in the morning,
No,
and their
and the
parents aren't
snow,
happy
yeah.
that they're cold, and
Yeah.
we just cannot thank your
Yeah.
bus drivers.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
just want to say how much we appreciate what they do. We really
Well, are you
do.
going to approve the funding for the heated huts at the bus stops, and we'll go from there?
Let me
So-
get my checkbook. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll let these folks go and we'll keep moving because I know there's a lot of folks waiting for our next items. Mr. Mathers, you're up. Our Chief Financial Officer. Public hearing, discussion, possible action to approve Washoe County School District Board Resolution 19-001, first one of the 19 year. Resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $1,500,000 of general obligation medium-term bonds for the purpose of acquiring school buses and other support vehicles for the district, and directing the Chief Financial Officer to forward materials to the Department of Taxation of the State of Nevada. Mr. Mathers.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. This item does require you to open and hold a public hearing.
So we will open the public hearing and
Great.
ask if there's any public comment. No public comment. Is there anyone here who hasn't filled out a card who would like to make public comment on our resolution authorizing the issuance of $1.5 million in bonds for new school buses and police vehicles? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Great. So I'll keep this very short and sweet. As the staff report indicates, this resolution would basically authorize staff to begin the process to issue medium-term notes up to $1.5 million. We'll come back to you, assuming approval of this resolution from you and assuming approval by the State Department of Taxation. We'll come back to you with a bond resolution in a month or two. And then we'll open bids for the financing of these vehicles. But this does start the process for that financing. And so, as the staff report indicates, of the $1.5 million, approximately $840,000 would go to buy 5.5 buses, and $500,000 would go to buy support vehicles. And then there's also a grant separately that the Transportation Department has applied for and has received to buy another 2.5 buses. So these medium-term notes are a form of debt. However, because the term is less than 10 years, again, we would go through a separate process than our other debt. We would not go through the County Debt Management Commission, but instead go to the State Department of Taxation. So with that, I think I'll just close my remarks and open it up for any questions you may have.
Questions from the board? Trustee Kelly?
Thank you, Madam President. I was just kind of curious about the types of buses and when the board would have an opportunity to talk about that. Are they electric buses or diesel buses? Are they regular buses, or would there be some small buses in there in the mix? Just curious about that.
Hello again. For the record, Rick Martin, Director of Transportation. At this point, the buses that are coming in at this particular juncture would be diesel buses. Part of that is based on the grant and what we have to destroy, so to speak, from their standards and the like on that situation. But we do have propane buses in our fleet, and all of our diesel buses are biodiesel, so they're environmentally sound from the fuel standpoint, and that's 100% on that end. And then as we look down the road, we've looked at some other options as far as other types of bus opportunities. One of the issues we find with electric buses right now is our terrain. We don't have a lot of straight routes up and down South Virginia. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? And Mark, do you want to just comment on our debt service coverage or our ratios? I know we're ample, but it's always good to put it on the public record if you can provide that for us.
Yes, so we have basically three types of debt here in the district. We have what we call rollover bonds, property tax supported debt, and our coverage ratio there is 110%. Then we have our new WC1 bonds that pledge sales tax revenues, and there we currently have more than 300% coverage. And then we have this third type of debt, these medium-term notes, and these are basically paid currently out of the general fund, although we'll be coming back to you shortly with a different idea for how we fund those. But they are paid currently out of the general fund budget.
Okay. And just for the record, we have adequate debt service coverage, and we have adequate debt capacity?
Yes, we do. We are well under our statutory limit in terms of the debt we may issue. We've issued less than half of our statutory limit. Our maximum would allow us to. We have strong debt service coverage, and that's one of the pluses in our favor when we go to the rating agencies.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Caudill.
So we have the $410,000 budgeted in our operating budget for the next 4 years. We're not just adding a line item right here.
Correct. So what we're doing is recycling. It's a rolling authorization. So we've got 4-year medium-term notes we issued 4 years ago that are rolling off, and so we're just recycling that money for this issuance.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we need a motion to approve that board resolution.
I'll make it.
Thank you, Vice President Raymond.
I move that the Board of Trustees approves Washoe County School District Board Resolution 19-001 and directs the Chief Financial Officer to forward materials to the Department of Taxation of the State of Nevada.
Thank you. And second by Dr. Taylor. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mathers. Yes, they have seatbelts now. Okay, our next item, 5.04, is opening of proposals to purchase and possible action to sell 29.446 acres of district-owned property located on Vista Boulevard for a minimum of $6 million pursuant to Washoe County School District Board Resolution 18-012 as adopted on December 11th, 2018. And Pete Pete's not here? Yeah, Pete is here. He's coming. And Mike Foster, our school planner, will be here.
Thank you, President Holland. I appreciate that. For the record, I'm Mike Foster with Capital Projects. I'm a school planner. On item 5.05 for that Vista, or 5.04 for the Vista property, on Friday we received a letter from the Kiley family who holds a right of first refusal on that property. So we will not be able to hear that item today. We have some additional homework we need to get done prior to that coming back to you.
Okay. And yes, that was, they certainly were in the documents originating that parcel, given the first right of refusal because it had originally been owned by them. So we'll have that process work through, and I'm sure we'll see you back for that one.
You bet.
Okay, so we are not even hearing that item, so we don't need any action on that item. All right, we'll go on to 5.05, opening of proposals to purchase and possible action to sell 10 acres of district-owned property located on Wilbur May Parkway for a minimum of $2,600,000 pursuant to Washoe County School District Board Resolution 18-013 as adopted on December 11th, 2018. Mike Buster's still here, and we will... are we going to have this process today?
We are.
Okay.
We
so
can.
Just so everyone knows the process, sealed bids will be opened and reviewed, and then we can call for oral bids, or must call for oral bids. So anyone in the audience, this is the auction on the courthouse steps, and any bid that would be provided orally must be at least 5% higher than the highest sealed bid that we receive. Council, do you want to add anything to that description of the process?
President Holland, I would just add that under the statutory framework, I think the initial, if there's an oral bid, that initial bid would have to be at least 5% higher. And then any bids thereafter do not have to meet a 5% threshold. They could be at any level.
Okay.
And ending with the last bid.
Okay, great. All right, so we have the sealed bids, so I guess I'm supposed to open them, is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, we've received 6 sealed bids for the Wilbur May property.
Okay.
And so the NRS says that in an open session here, you have to open, examine, and declare these bids. And I've got 6 of them here. Should I pass them to JJ and pass them around?
We'll bring them around. It is. Okay.
Should we do a drum roll before you open?
I think so. I think these folks would be very anxious to, and me without my gold-plated letter opener. Okay. And again, the order of these bids does not matter at this point. It's the highest of the sealed bids that would be considered, and then we will ask for oral bids. So I'm opening the first bid, and this is from Green Street Companies, LLC. Purchase price of $2.6 million, a deposit of $100,000 placed into escrow within 3 business days, and other provisions. But the purchase price on this one for Green Street Companies, LLC is $2.6 million. The next one we will open. And again, as you heard, that's the minimum bid is $2.6 million. I think we do need some music or, da 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 da. Okay, this bid is from Colliers, and the purchase price shall be $2,600,000. So again, same bid of $2,600,000. What the legal counsel has exited and has not given me instruction on what happens if we have more than one at $2.6 million. That means that potentially we'll have oral bids competing. Okay, this is from Archcrest Commercial Partners, Inc., and the purchase price is listed as $2,650,000. So that is our highest bid so far. Okay. We should have done a letter opener. Well, next time we do this, we'll have a letter opener. So JJ, are you doing that? Who's doing that?
Yeah, you know that.
It had to be Scott. Okay. Our next bid is from Biltmore Wilbur May 10 LLC. And the proposed purchase price is $2,750,000, which is the highest so far. Okay. Number 5, I believe. Oh, we have some other documents from Archcrest. This is from Silverado Homes, and the proposed purchase price on this is $3,050,000. So that's our highest so far. And I have a second envelope from Archcrest Wilbur May. Is that a? That's another one. It's a separate.
That should be a separate
okay.
one. Yes.
All right. I didn't want to mess up here. Okay. And this is okay, from Insight. And the purchase price on this is $2,700,000. So it appears that currently the highest bid is $3,050,000 from Silverado Homes. So that's our top at the moment. And yes, sir.
Thank you, President Howell. I just wanted to add that under NRS 393-270, 280, that oral, if there are any oral bids that are going to be put forward, the initial would have to be exceeding by at least 5% of the highest written proposal after deducting the commissions, if any, to be paid to any licensed real estate brokers. I don't know if there are any real estate brokers involved with these, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that that's one condition of the 5%.
So I'm just doing my quick math. Absent the information we just received about reducing commissions, et cetera, the 5% just on top of $3,050,000, the next bid would have to be, if I'm doing this correctly, $3,202,500, but it would have to be, in addition, they would have to pay any commission or fees that were on top of that. Is that correct?
Correct, after deducting any commission to be paid to a real estate broker, licensed broker, if any.
Okay. So are there any oral bids that would be at a minimum of $3,202,500? Mr. Mathers, did you check my math on that?
You are correct.
Thank you. Not that I don't trust anyone else to do the math, but I thought I better ask the CFO. Are there any oral bids? If you would.
Question?
Yes, sir. Would you come forward and give your name for the record and speak on the microphone?
Brian Kruger, Archcrest. Question I have is in regards to the offers is due diligence period. Because I know all those offers, I guarantee, vary on that standpoint. Some might be shorter, some might be longer. So on Washoe's standpoint, where does that fall into the order of importance? Or is it just strictly a number?
Good question. Counsel, can you give us any guidance on that?
Well, I would defer to the resolution. What are the particulars of the resolution? I'm not.
Mike, do you have the resolution?
The resolution essentially just mimics what it says in the NRS. And so talking about the 5% greater, the highest bid is what stands out in the NRS to me. I didn't see anything else where it talked about due diligence periods or closing times. So that has been a concern. I've received calls from the brokers over the last few weeks here. So I don't know if the NRS allows you to weigh those time periods, or just to take the highest bid. To me, it says take the highest bid.
And I believe that we would have a tough time calculating the financial benefit to the district consistently across all bids to incorporate something other than the bid price for the purchase.
And Chris Reich, for the record, I would just say under 393-270, it just talks about the highest bid. And I didn't know if there was any other parameters in the resolution because I didn't review that prior to this, but it's the highest bid.
Does anything in NRS define bid? I mean, we typically do a lot of bids in this organization, and the bid is on a price. It's not on other conditions. It's based on the price for the specifications that we list. Dr. Taylor?
Madam President, I'm reading the resolution, excuse me, and point 1 just says all due diligence is the sole responsibility of the approved buyer. It doesn't say anything about consideration of it.
Well, I'm unless you have some definition in NRS for bid, I don't think that the district can equate financially due diligence periods as a factor in the bid price. I'm willing to be corrected on that, but I don't find any basis for correcting that.
As I stated earlier, the provision under Chapter 393 is the highest bidder.
Okay. So at this point, again, is there anyone wishing to make an oral bid for a minimum of $3,202,500?
May I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Please come forward and give your name for the record.
I'm Ted Stover with Colliers. So the highest bid will be able to set their own terms? Is that what I'm understanding? As long as they're the highest bid, they can set...
They've provided the terms. I mean, they've proposed
So
terms.
it's the terms proposed in there, provided it's the longest?
Yes, that's the sealed bid.
Okay,
Yes.
and then on the commissions, I believe everybody here is represented by brokers. Is it, we don't think we know what the fee would be. So is it a level playing field that we're all working from?
The what I think council instructed us is the 5% additional to the highest bid is net of other commissions. So you would have to pay $3,202,500 plus whatever you're paying for commissions. That's your or whoever wishes to make that proposal.
It's the responsible of the
Correct.
buyer.
And if you can negotiate it lower, that's fine. But it's net. The $3,202,500 is net.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's correct. And I just want to add, again, Chris Reich for the record, that it's not only that initial bid that must be at least 5%, but it's the final highest bid, oral bid, is the same thing, net.
Okay.
As you explained.
Yes, sir. Yes, please come forward. I appreciate the questions because, you know, this is the first time the district has done this in a very long time, so.
So just to be clear, for the interest of Washoe, for example, one offer might be at $2.6 million, but it's, you know, a 10-day close. Where, for example, you might get a higher number, but they technically get 4 or 5 years on that escrow or whatever they would want.
Yeah, there are no
and in
escrows
regards to the oral bidders, it's my understanding that you didn't have to make a written submittal by the deadline.
Correct.
So in regards to the oral bids, I have a question on that, because if you just say 4 million and you can tie this up for 15 years, that's obviously wouldn't be the best interest of Washoe. You would think that you would want to take into account, maybe a deal might be faster, which would be more advantageous for a lesser price, if that makes sense.
I do understand your point, yeah, it's subject to NRS, it's subject to the resolution, and I don't believe we have any of these bids that are tying it up for an extraordinary period of time, but actually I'd be happy to, yes sir, please come forward and give us your name.
Hi, my name is Barry Rowe. Just to bring your attention to a couple of provisions in the NRS that may shed some light on some of the concerns raised by the gentleman, which I agree with. First of all, with regard to the commission, NRS 393.250, with regard to the resolution for the bidding process, specifies that not only must the minimum price be specified, but also the commission, which was not done in the resolution. And with regard to then the 5%, I believe it's incorrect to, it may become moot because the bids may be far exceed 5%, but I just wanted to comment that the 5% would not include the commission, because theoretically there would be a commission deducted from, I mean, I haven't looked at the highest bid that you just opened, but presumably there would be a commission attached to that. So you would look at the net that the county would receive after, or the school district would receive after deducting the commission from that first bid and the 5%. But again, that would probably become moot if the 5% is far exceeded. And then, sure.
I just interrupt you since we're not on a clock with you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that interpretation is how I understand it, that the net of commission and fees only applies to the direction that the oral bid be 5% greater than the highest bid that we've received. The commission netting out doesn't apply to all the other bids. It's only on the basis of the oral bid. Is that correct? That has to be 5% plus commissions and fees. So these bids are not $3,050,000 and then you subtract commissions and fees. The bid is $3,050,000 and the conditions will determine how seller and buyer split escrow fees, for example. Those are standard provisions that are in these.
Right. Like I said, it'll probably become moot anyway, but my comment with regard to the commission should have been stated in the resolution is clearly stated in the statute. So, and then besides the commission, with regard to the public interest, for example, the gentleman, if I heard correctly, suggested somebody could have put a 5-year or a 15-year or whatever due diligence period into their bid, as opposed to perhaps an oral bidder who has no specified period. So there's an issue of whether anybody who submitted an oral bid is locked in versus somebody who just walked through the door without actually following the invitation of the board to submit a written bid on Friday, would be freer in the terms that they put forth, provided they raise their hand and put the highest dollar value out. And with regard to the public interest, I would direct your attention to, let me get the correct citation here, 393.300, rejection of bids and withdrawal of property from sale or lease. The Board of Trustees may, at any public meeting held by the Board of Trustees pursuant to the provisions of NRS 393.247, if it deems such an action to be for the best public interest, reject any bid or withdraw the property from sale or lease.
Correct. Yes.
That's all.
Yes, thank you. And we can reject bids. I'm just doing a quick review. I have not discovered one that has 4 or 5 years. Most of these are payable within a matter of days. There is one Biltmore Wilbur May 10 LLC that does have a due diligence period of 180 days listed, not longer than, or no, it says shall be. It's not longer than, it shall be 180 days. But most of these, let's see, purchase price, let's see. Yeah, I know, it's getting quieter. Buyer's obligation to purchase within 30 days. So I'm not finding any that create a anything that is disadvantageous to the district or to the public at this point. Again, is anyone in the audience coming forward to provide an oral bid of a minimum of $3,202,500? Okay, yeah.
On behalf of Colliers International, the client we're representing, will offer a bid.
Would you come and please, state that on the record, Melissa? Thank you.
Hi again, Melissa Molyneux with Colliers International, and we will up our bid to $3,202,500.
Okay, and then would other provisions of your proposal remain the same?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then, as stated by council, the next bid can be anything greater than, next oral bid can be anything greater than $500. Is anyone willing to go higher? Yes, sir.
Greg Peitzmeyer of Silverado Homes, and we will go to $3,250,000.
$3,250,000 with
And-
the same.
and all other conditions would remain the
provisions.
same.
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone else willing to come forward on an oral bid that would be greater than $3,250,000? Yes, Ms. Molyneux.
Hi again, Melissa Molyneux. On behalf of Colliers International client, we will up our bid to $3,275,000.
Thank you, with the same provisions.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you, Ms. Molyneux. Yes, sir.
Greg Peitzmeyer, Silverado Homes, $3,003,000.
Thank you, sir. Okay. I feel like I should be doing that auction. This is a very, very sober and serious process, though, and I do appreciate everyone's attention. So our top bid at this point from Silverado is $3,300,000. Is anyone willing to make a bid that is greater? Ms. Molyneux.
Melissa Molyneux, on behalf of Colliers International, we're going to up our bid to $3,350,000.
Okay, $3,350,000. Do we have, okay. Sir?
Greg with Silverado Homes, $3,004,000.
$3,400,000. Anyone else? Ms. Molyneux? She's back. You could take a seat closer if you wanted to.
I have to consult with, the
Yes.
pocketbook. Melissa Molyneux with Colliers International, 3.45. 3.45.
Okay, so $3,450,000.
And all
Okay.
the conditions stay the same.
Thank you. Greg, it's to you.
$3.5 million.
Okay, $3,500,000. Silverado. Going once? Okay.
Me again, Melissa Molyneux with Colliers International, $3,550,000, and all conditions stay the same.
Thank you. $3,550,000 is our highest bid.
We're done.
Okay. All right. Going once. Is there anyone else who's willing to make an oral bid at an amount greater than $3,550,000 for the property? Going twice. All right, hearing none, sold to Colliers for $3,550,000. Thank you. We appreciate, okay. So we have, is there any public comment on anything else related to this? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion, and the motion would, is such that the Board of Trustees deems the district-owned 10-acre property on Wilmer Bay Parkway as surplus and accepts the bid from Colliers in the amount of $3,550,000 for the property pursuant to Washoe County School District Board Resolution 18-013.
So move.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Is there a second? By Trustee Caudill. Is there any further discussion? Thank you all so much. Yes, sir. Would you? We've passed the point of public comment. So but is there something material to our that wasn't mentioned?
The commission for the highest written bid.
Okay. If
the broker who brought that was entitled.
We've already had a motion and a second, so perhaps we can talk about that with staff. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Yes, Trustee Kelly.
Madam President, there's a couple companies called Colliers, so maybe just specify Colliers International so that we know.
Melissa, do you want to give us further details on?
Melissa Molyneux for the record. The offer was submitted on behalf of Nevada Stage Waldorf Academy, and I have their legal name in that offer as well under the buyer.
Okay.
I amend my motion, Madam President.
Okay, to include that, thank you. Okay, and does the seconder agree to include that in the motion, Mr. Caudill? Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Unanimously passes. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your work on this, and we're very excited to have you take the property. Thank you. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay. I know, you didn't get to have fun. Do I have to sign this right now? Can I? Okay. Here.
You can do that after.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay.
I just need this.
Okay, you got it all. Okay, we will go on to item 5.06, which is information, discussion, and possible action to appoint a member or members of the Board of Trustees to the following non-Washoe County School District public bodies pursuant to Board Policy 9100. Committees of the Board of Trustees, Appendix A, list of committees, Debt Management Commission, excuse me, folks, the Nevada Association of School Boards Board of Directors and the Nevada Association of School Boards Executive Committee, Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association Board of Control, Regional Planning Governing Board, and the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. And I do want to mention, we typically do also have board members who act as liaisons or attend the Student Advisory Council, but it is not listed in the agenda as an appointment we would make today, and so whoever wants to be on the Student Advisory Council certainly may do so and attend their meetings, but it's not an appointment that the board makes. So I just wanted to call that out because I had discussions with some of you about that, and you certainly can be the liaison from the board, but we won't appoint it today because it's not on the agenda. So let's start with the Debt Management Commission. I understand that Vice President Raymond, who served on the Debt Management Commission last year, had a marvelous time, found it enthralling. It's an important regional body, and I do understand that Trustee Caudill is interested in that assignment. Are you still interested in that, Mr. Caudill? Is anyone else interested in serving on the Debt Management Commission? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion to appoint Andrew Caudill to the Debt Management. Oh boy, look at how quickly she. And you called me out for the bus driver thing. Okay.
Yeah. I'm happy to do it. So
Yeah.
moved. I really enjoyed it, and it's pretty fascinating. And they're short meetings usually. So.
Good. Okay, so you're
so moved.
Okay, for Andrew Caudill to be our designee to the Debt Management Commission. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Taylor. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Great, congratulations. Our next one, the Nevada Association of School Boards, and we have 2 appointments to that. One is to the Executive Committee and one is to Board of Directors. Mr. Kelly, I understand that you might be willing to be one of our appointees to the School Board Association.
That's true. That still stands.
Are you interested in being on the Executive Committee?
I think in light of my family situation, whichever one of the 2 that they meet evenings. And I don't remember which one it was. I don't know if it was the Board of Directors or the Executive Committee.
That would be the Board of Directors.
Okay, so the Board of Directors would be the one that I would prefer.
Okay. And is there anyone else who wants to be considered for the Association of School Boards Board of Directors seat? Okay, seeing no one. Oh, yes, Jackie? Okay, we need to have 2. I think, Andrew, you were also interested in one of the, no? Okay. It does require that we have a very committed presence to those meetings. They do have some meetings by phone, and they were very interested in us having some folks who would be very dedicated and would be willing to rise through the ranks in the School Boards Association, the statewide School Boards Association, for office in the future. So I just want to be full disclosure about the requests that they're making.
Typically, the Executive Committee will meet the day before a professional development session in the afternoon for a few hours, and then they do a joint meeting with the Board of Directors in the evening. Aside from that, they do teleconferences about once every 2 or 3 months.
But those in-person meetings are several hours long in the afternoon.
Yes.
And they're usually on a Friday.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's probably a difficult one for you. Yeah, okay. Would anyone else, Ellen, is that something that might interest you? No. We really do need, we need some help on that. Anyone willing? I'm going to be serving on 2 other boards, so I'm going to be tied up too.
This is for the Executive Committee.
Yeah. Tough. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and we have entertained a nomination for Scott Kelly for Nevada Association of School Boards Board of Directors seat. Okay. Motion by Dr. Taylor. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Calvert. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. This is tough, I know. Let's come back to that one. The Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association Board of Control. Oh, ma'am. Yes.
So before you do that one, so we need a specific agenda item on this one later because of the way their appointments run. They're for specific terms, and it would be filling the remainder of Trustee Mayer's term. So if someone's interested in doing that, we would bring that appointment to the next board meeting on consent.
We're not going to bring it this time?
It's a separate agenda item. We'll bring it back.
Okay. Okay. And I would entertain a motion to appoint Dr. Taylor to that, filling out Mr. Mayer's term, and then we'll bring it back later. Yes.
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Raymond. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Calvert. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then the Regional Planning Governing Board. This is not a voting seat on the Regional Planning Governing Board. It is a statutory framework of representatives from the cities and the county, and I would volunteer to be our representative to the Regional Planning Governing Board. I've had a great deal of experience with the Regional Planning Governing Board in the past. So
moved.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Kelly. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then I also would like to serve on the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. I've served on that board for 15 years when I was county manager, and I have been serving in the past year on that board. So I would appreciate a motion to appoint myself.
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Kelly. Second by Trustee Minetto. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. What incentives can I provide to somebody to serve on the executive committee of the Nevada Association of School Boards? Is there anyone who'd be willing to?
I can commit to 2 years. I
that's
don't know
wonderful.
that, that will
You would go
make
farther.
them suffice their desires, but
Well,
I'm
and they can only
willing
ask.
to serve for 2 years.
Thank you so much, Vice
Hurry
President
up.
Raymond.
I move.
Yeah. Is there a second? I'll second that. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much, Vice President Raymond, for stepping up. That's great. And as we mentioned, I know Trustee Minetto, you and I had talked about your potentially working with the Student Advisory Council. So just, again, we wouldn't be appointing you, but you are absolutely welcome and encouraged to attend those meetings. Yes, Trustee Caudill.
Does EDON need somebody? I see it's on here. It's in red. I don't know what that means.
That's what EDON is, the Economic Development Authority of,
Is that the same thing as a Smarter Region Economic Development Vision
That
Subcommittee?
that doesn't exist anymore,
Oh.
the Smarter Region. Yeah, that went defunct a few years ago. But yeah, we just did the EDON. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, the list has got other things. Yeah, we have some things on that list. David, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you. David Lasik, Chief of Staff for the record. So the one you just spoke of doesn't exist anymore. I think that morphed into EDON. And then the Title I one that follows that one doesn't exist anymore. We don't do that one. So once we have all of your appointments, we will update the list and update the policy.
Gotcha. Okay, so those last two, Title I Committee of Practitioners and the Smarter Region, we do not need to make appointments to. Okay. Is there any public comment on that item? All right. Hearing none, we congratulate everyone on those appointments and thank you for your service in doing so, because folks don't really realize how much work goes into being a school board trustee, and there's a lot of additional work, so we thank you for signing on for that. Okay, we will move to item 6, and just for the benefit of new board members, this is the time when we share typically school visits that we have made or events we've been to, anything that needs to be provided in terms of what board members are up to. We try to keep it brief, and there is no discussion among board members about any of those meetings we attend, other than oftentimes we will say it was really cool or whatever. Yes, Vice President Raymond, did you have something?
I will start.
Yes.
And might be one of few, because I know we were all on break and there wasn't much going on, but I was able to join Trustee Minetto last Friday at the topping off ceremony for Polaquitas Elementary School, which was really exciting to see the new design. I haven't seen it in person since we were at the groundbreaking where it was just dirt. So it's going to be awesome, and it was really cool to see the outside kind of in person. It's different than what we saw, in the schematics, but it's really different in a good way.
Excellent, excellent, and thank you for representing the board at that. I know the staff had short notice for that topping off ceremony, so we really appreciate you both being there. Yeah.
There's a great group of kids that they were able to pull from, I think, Double Diamond, because they were in session that week anyway. So
excellent.
They all got to sign the beam, and it was cute. And I took my daughter, and she liked it. So.
That's very cool. Very cool. Any other board reports of anything you want to share?
A couple basketball games.
Yeah, good. All right.
I will just add, this is great. We have, for the first time in our district, we have a female who's the head coach of a varsity boys basketball team.
Oh, wow. That's pretty
And so
exciting.
I got a chance to check that out. So it was
That's
good. And they
great.
won, by the way, too.
All right, great,
Yep.
great. Just again, for the benefit of new board members, Sam Fredrickson and Board Services will be sending out every week, here's things that are coming up. And please make sure you let her know what you're going to be attending and that you actually do attend what you say you're going to attend. Because we've been working hard to make sure that we distribute that attendance at board meetings or at community events so that we spread that and make sure we know who's going to be there and that we're always where we say we're going to be. And then any others that want to? Okay, superintendent's report. We want to get folks out of here because the snow's flying.
Yes, I'll be really quick. So last week I had an opportunity to meet with U.S. Senator Rosen's office, and we discussed a variety of educational concerns, and, we lobby on the Hill for some of those things. But more importantly, the National Commission on Social, Emotional, and Academic Development report was out today. Unfortunately, due to the snow, we could not be in D.C. Kristen was going to go and represent us, but we'll give you the report. I think it's important because in that National Commission report, Washoe County School District is mentioned in many vignettes around the work we are doing nationally. So kudos to the team and everyone that's doing work for our kids and what we've accomplished, because some of that work has actually showed up in the National Commission report.
Wow,
Yep.
very exciting. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. How many minutes did I forget? 3. Okay.
We got 3 minutes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Jumping out's a big thing for us in the job. It's the last piece of steel, the last piece of structure.
There you go.
Exciting day here at Desert Skies Middle School. It's certainly a milestone, letting us know we're that much closer to a brand new middle school here in the Sun Valley community.
Today was a special day. I mean, these guys and gals have been working 6 days a week for many, many weeks. And to take a moment and celebrate that and thank them really was, heartwarming, honestly.
I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a great opportunity, and it's really good for the community. I think we've needed a school to bring everyone together for a while in Sun Valley.
It's a really dynamic time to be a part of developing a school, to really hone in on what works for the community, what works for the students, and be able to apply that at elementary school and advance that into the middle school. Really unique opportunity.
I like math, and I also read a lot. I like to read. I'm going to study a lot and pay attention in class to get high grades so I get to meet new people.
It looks amazing. I talked to the librarian about how our library is going to have a full makerspace in it, and that the English and social studies classes will get to do 2 projects per month in the library, co-taught with the librarian using technology and hands-on learning.
I'm excited because I'm going to be the librarian here at the school, so to see the space, to see how large it's going to be and all the possibilities.
And so your child is going to be here in which grade?
She's going to start 6th grade here next year. A lot of times the time in transit to and from school can be taxing on the kids, especially if they're looking at 45 to an hour long bus rides each way. So being able to get up and get to school in 10-15 minutes is really nice. I work for Wesco Distribution. We're a local electrical wholesale house. We're working with Briggs Electric, who's on site doing a lot of the electrical work. So we're supplying a lot of the building materials and the lighting. It's really cool to know that you've got your hands on stuff that's actually going into community projects.
So far, we've hired our site leadership team, and so that includes department leads in social studies, math, English language arts, electives. So just hiring key people at this point that are going to be integral in really next steps of developing our climate and culture.
Oh, wow, I love it.
Your drop ceilings are going to be going up and down, different variations.
So exciting to get to come in here and see the walls going up and the color going up. It's amazing. I can't wait for kids to get here.
There's no substitute for seeing this physically come to life. We've been staring at plans, but to actually see it physically in person is a completely different experience, and it's incredibly exciting.
construction of the school is amazing. The work going on to make sure everything's ready inside the school is happening daily, and so everyone's that's been involved has been super productive, and I think we're right on target.
Oh, yay. Wow. Woo. Very exciting. Thanks to the team for putting that together and also for all of the great work. Okay. Do we have any future agenda item requests? Time when we can bring forward a future agenda item. We don't discuss it, but Vice President Raymond.
Thank you. I had a request actually from a constituent that made me think that it had been a while, I think, since we had heard more fully about the dual language program and kind of what it looks like from K all the way through high school. And I know right now we just have K through 8, but they were just questioning with the new schools and things if what that was going to look like. And so there's no urgency to it, but just interested, especially with new trustees and having a presentation on dual language in our schools.
Great. Okay. All right. Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. I think I got that report from NJ on the on walking to school and the safety of all that and so on. So if we can have that at a again, no sense of urgency right this instant, but something we want to be looking at. So
okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, and staff does a great job of providing us with a list of the ongoing, but agenda item requests that have been made and when they're heard and all that. So these will be added to that list. Okay. And then do we have any final public comment? No? Okay. All right. So our next meeting will be Tuesday, January 29th. So you have a week off next week. And I want to thank the new trustees and our continuing trustees for a great meeting today. It's a difficult meeting, tough first meeting for you all, but thank you for your great attention and great questions, and we're just so pleased to have a new team going forward in 2019. So that will be adjourned.